We are like 30 seconds. We still have like 30 seconds, and yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let me get into the live stream. Welcome and welcome back to the channel, my dear friends. Thanks for tuning in. In today's video, we have a lot to talk about, especially the new releases, the Sigma, this Panasonic, and Sony, actually. And who am I to talk about all these things, and why do you need to care about my opinion? I am Jay from Alissa and Jay, and I love to shoot photos and videos. And Alissa and I together, we love to do travel vlogs and travel related content. We are so passionate about nature, wildlife, and our passion relies on what the nature has to offer. And so we have made our website, alissaj.com. Please feel free to check it out. And here we have tech related content, travel related content, and videos and photos. So if you want to know more about my interest in nature and wildlife photos, you can check it out here. And I think you don't need latest and greatest cameras to do all these things. This one was shot using Nikon D500, and I will stick to my opinion that you just need a Nikon D500 to shoot such photos. This is very, very difficult photo. Unless the butterfly is staying still like this, you will not be able to get something like this. So yeah, I mean, you need to be understanding what cameras and lenses that you're using, if those things work for you. And for me, that's why I started to make even the review content in the first place, to show you what gear is just required for making the contents. And I want to go as minimal as possible. And yeah, that's why I got this A7C2 here with this 16 to 35 millimeter F2.8 G Master 2, and also I have this Fujifilm X106, and I do have a 70 to 200 G Master 2 f2.8. And with those things, you cannot do wildlife. I'm looking for a different wildlife lens, and thanks for Sony to announce their new wildlife lens, that is 400 to 800 millimeters, which is super interesting in my opinion. I'll come back to that point later. So here in the tech, you can see all of my tech reviews over here and how-to videos. I have a few over here, but there's a lot more available in the channel. So here it'll take us to take you to alissaj.com. Sorry, Alissa and J website. What am I talking? YouTube playlists and such. So you can check out all of the videos over here. With that said, let's skip to the topic in hand. And are you seeing this, right? So many new things from Panasonic, and it's super interesting in my opinion. Let's start from the first. I think the dots are like super camouflage in between all the photos. So one thing I noticed was this. So look at this. So Lumix X DJI Pro. I think they are partnering with each other to bring out all these gimbal cameras and stuff, which is super interesting. And also looking at all these newer lenses, they are going towards the goal of being minimal. That's what I'm seeing. And also we can see that the new Panasonic S1R Mark II is like super exciting in my opinion, and we will dive deep into that as well. And if you haven't ever used GH7 body, I highly recommend you to go and check it out. That feels like a complete body. Like once you hold the GH7 camera, you feel like, what a tool it is. It can stay on my hand for the entire day. That's how you would feel. And I'm not here to boast about GH7, but yeah, that's what it is. And also to get more camera content, camera details, if you're curious to know what a camera has to offer, there's a website called CineD. I'm pretty sure you must be aware of it. They have an entire databases of all the sensor details and such. You can check them out over here. So I will come back to this website every time I discuss about a camera or lens. And for lens scoring, there is another website called DxO Mark, something like that. So we will not talk too much about the lens scoring process, but let's talk about lenses here. All right. So Sigma has updated their logo, first of all, and Sigma has also updated their website. Their new website looks slick. But there are a few things that we have to understand about this new website. So let's see how we can filter these things. So they have under products, is it the original page? Okay, this is their first landing page, and we can see here right away they are advertising the BF camera. BF camera is like super good, good looking. I don't know how it performs functionally, but yeah, it's good looking in a way. And also, I will talk about this. I'm a sucker for minimalist gear. I love cameras that are a rangefinder that offers a complete package with minimal stuff. And BF camera is like super exciting in a way that the design cues are super good, unibody design, which is mostly used by all these smartphone manufacturers and computer manufacturers. And it looks like Apple has made the Sigma product. That's how I feel looking at it. And it's so beautiful. But is it practical though? That's the question everybody to need to ask themselves. So here, if I go to cameras, let's open this up. Yeah. So here we have, so Sigma has been known to make cameras very simple, like FP, FPL, etc. And FPL is actually like 60 plus megapixel camera, and it was okay. It was able to produce the DNG raw images as like a sequenced photos. It has a very different format for raw videos. So this one, on the other hand, have a very, very different design cue. And coming from a camera like X106, this is what I would compare this full frame BF camera with. And I want to talk a few things, why they have chosen what they have chosen and why I think it's justified. So starting, let me talk about the design first. They don't have a grip, which is fine. They have made this part textured, so which is more convenient to hold a camera, which is okay, but the lens is the limiting factor. I will come back to that lens point later, because this camera X106 has a lens inbuilt, but if you look at the sensor placement, the sensor is somewhere way towards the back, and only the circuitry that takes the image sensor data and process it is right behind the sensor. So whenever if you don't open this display, this part will be like super hot if you were to shoot for a long time. So that happens because the circuitry is right behind the sensor, and sensor is right over here. This marking, I think, yeah, this marking is the sensor area. And let's see where the sensor is placed in this BF camera. You will immediately realize that the sensor placement plays a big role in the lens attachment. So in X106, the lens is like way deep inside the camera itself, which is allowing for the leaf shutter for X106. But for BF camera, you can see the sensor is right here. So if the sensor is right here, somewhere in the middle of the camera, which means they don't have enough leeway to put the lens inside, which means the mount itself is protruding outside, and also they need to make sure that they pair with enough lens. So either we can expect pancake style lenses from Sigma in the future, or you just have to put up with whatever lenses they have currently. So that's the most limiting factor of this camera. This camera is amazing. If the lens were to be like a few millimeters away from the camera, this would have been a perfect carry-around camera. I would totally switch this X106 for the BF in a heartbeat, but no, that's not happening yet. So we have to wait until the BF camera gets its own lens. All right. So that's something we need to wait. Let's get rid of the lens situation. Let's talk about this camera itself. All right. So how practical is it, right? So we have a shutter button, which is pretty standard. It lacks EVF or a viewfinder, which is okay in this day and age. They are okay not to have a EVF because we mostly use a bigger screen to see the image. But sometimes I do want to have EVF in bright light conditions, which is not there, which is mostly not possible for this kind of a tiny camera. It's a full frame camera, keep in mind, and it is a 24 megapixel camera. Where do I even go for the specs? Yeah, here. All right. So let's look at the specs, right? For a moment, we have been admiring all the design so far. So let's talk about the specs. Internal memory, I really appreciate giving the option for internal memory, but I do not appreciate not having the option for external memory. So that's something they can think about in the future. Also, non-replaceable batteries, like you cannot take out the battery, charge them and put it back, or replace the battery, which in my opinion is a very bad design choice. I do not like it at all. So when it comes to designing a product, there are two aspects I really appreciate. One, replaceable batteries, and two, is having more customization options. A replaceable battery is good in so many ways, and how do I put it? Does it even have a replaceable battery? Let me check, right? There is not even a single photo that shows the bottom of the camera. I haven't checked the other reviewers talking about it, but let's check it out. Battery. Yeah, so it says including the battery, probably replaceable battery. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. So yeah, maybe they have a battery here, and the weight of the product itself is like 4.5, 450 grams, which is like super good in my opinion. Yeah, so it is powered by lithium-ion battery pack BP81 apparently, so it does have a replaceable battery, which is fantastic. Um, Although this construction allows the lens to be used in the light rain, it is not at the same level as being waterproof. So it's not a waterproof camera, but there is water resistant for this camera. So that's something good for the camera going on. So a lot of things about this camera is something that Panasonic does for their cameras, like 6K video recording, log shooting, log shooting, different file codecs, etc., which is fine, which is totally fine and acceptable. Continuous shooting enabled time for 2 hours, which is super good. And yeah, a lot of things that's going on with this camera. So I would say cliche, but it depends on like how you view it. So drive modes. Here is something I don't like. I always love having mechanical shutter options. Having just electronic shutter is making it more of a video camera than a photo camera. And I do not like it about the Nikon cameras, Nikon Z8 and Z9 especially, but they do have a very capable stack sensor camera, stack sensor. So that's reading out super fast, so you don't have those disadvantages that electronic shutter has, which is, in my opinion, super good. So overall, I think this product, this Sigma BF, is something only a very niche market would even think of getting, but it's a very promising product that shows us where the design choice is going towards, and especially for Sigma. So I do like it. You can see the lens is protruding a lot outside, which is the same case as, if you remember, Sony RX1 Mark II. They do have a 35mm lens, which is not interchangeable. So that's what we had with Sony. It's very similar, but in a way a lot modern. That RX1 Mark II had, you know, viewfinder, like retractable viewfinder in it, which this camera doesn't have, which is a bummer. Everybody who need to have a camera should think about the EVF should be a mandatory thing. And Sony did put in a lot of effort making that camera, but nowadays I don't think that's happening. I think we can move on to the next product. So the second product from Sigma is actually the super long 300 to 600 millimeter f4 lens. Being a wildlife photographer, wildlife videographer, I love any lens that's big and having wider aperture. So let's go to sorting. So now we are going to filter out the right lens. So mirrorless cameras, Sony E-mount. I'm not sure which one it is. So I think it's full frame and zoom. So let's look at this one. Yeah, 300 to 600 f4. This is an unbelievable achievement from Sigma. Sigma love to make these kind of lenses at an affordable price, and also weight. Okay, so This lens is 4 kilograms. Last time I checked, 600 millimeter f4 G Master Sony lens was like 3.5 kgs. But this one is a zoom lens, 300 to 600 millimeters f4, weighing only around roughly 4,000 grams. That is like 4 kilograms. Is super impressive. If the same job was to given to Viltrox engineers, they would be making a massive lens which cannot be held in hand. So that's what is the Viltrox concept is. Get the lens done regardless of the weight. They totally disregard the usability factor when making a lens. But Sigma, on the other hand, they are doing a wonderful job in making their lenses. They have like premium history of making lenses, and they understand what is important for the users, and that's what I value about Sigma. Even though I don't own any of the Sigma lenses, I do like the direction they are going towards, and I do understand what they value in the user perspective. So this is an awesome lens. I welcome this lens to my heart because it's a f4. It's the zoom range may be like just 2x, but if you consider there isn't any other lens like this in the market with a constant aperture of f4 weighing only 400 grams. That's super impressive. Would I buy it? It's around 6,000 dollars, I believe. Let's check the price in bhphotovideo.com. This is like super good website in my opinion. So Sigma 300 to 600. Let's check the price. Okay, $6,000. So $6,000, it's super worth it for $6,000. See, look at this price. Okay, $6,000 when compared to $13,000 from Sony for 600 millimeter f4. This is super impressive, isn't it? Isn't it? For just 4 kilograms, and Sony's G Master 600 millimeter f4 is like 3.5 kgs. If you compare with Nikon 800mm f5.6, I believe, or 6.3, that is a super light lens at 2.5 kgs. So I would say this is very good, but there are better lenses from Nikon. Nikon 600mm f5.6 PF is actually a bit lighter, but you're compromising a lot on the the aperture. So I think overall it's a very good compromise in terms of price, in terms of usability, etc. It's more affordable for most users. Should a wildlife photographer buy this? I would say a hard no. Okay, no wildlife photographer should buy this. But it is a lot more useful for sports photographers. See, when doing sports photography, let's say you're in a soccer team or when you're shooting baseball, you might end up using like two cameras, like 70 to 200 f2.8 and one of these, and you are very well secured. Why? Because you have a constant aperture of f4 and you get to separate the subject very nicely. So for sports photographers, I think this is a very good asset, but for wildlife, I think you need more reach. So that's where the 400 to 800 millimeters lens from Sony will be more useful for wildlife photographers. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I would do after using the 200 to 600 millimeters and 200 to 500 millimeters from Nikon. I feel like the reach is not quite there with the 600 millimeters, and so definitely not for wildlife. Although it's not like you cannot do wildlife, you can do wildlife even with 70 to 200 millimeters and get some super good photos like these. With that said, let's move on to the next topic. What else is impressive about this? A lot of things are impressive about this. Like when I consider the construction of the lens itself, let's say for example, let's talk about the end of the lens, the hood, including the body. I think they are all rubber covered, so if you were to place it down upright, it's not getting scratched anyway. And also there is a filter that can be popped into it from the rear side, which are all super nice. You can also pair it with the extender, teleconverter, etc. So it's all fantastic. the image stabilization, I don't think anyone is hand holding this lens, so image stabilization you can just totally disregard, just shoot with high higher ISOs. Most cameras today can do very high ISOs, so yeah, totally doable. And yeah, I think that's about it. It's a super impressive lens, good for sports, but may not be good enough for wildlife. So that's about it. Now moving on to the next one, we have the budget-friendly 16 to 300 millimeters f 3.5 to f6.7. What do I think about this one? This, I think, there's a competition in this range from Tamron as well. So this is 16 to 300. I want to check the price quickly. For 700 bucks, guys, for 700 bucks, if you're a travel videographer or traveler, just want to shoot the photos around, this lens should do. Okay, very good lens. Just go ahead and buy it. The aperture looks super impressive, 6.7. Yeah, so there are some Tamron equivalents as well. Let's check it out. Tamron, I think it's 18 to 300 or 400. See, Tamron has lenses from 18 to 300, 18 to 400, etc. They have a lot of competition in this range, so you have a lot more choices to choose between. But I would say Sigma will do a better job in this regard because it's a newer lens. Yeah, high speed AF motor, blah blah blah. But I haven't checked the MFT charts yet. I'm just assuming MFT charts will look good. Okay, let's check it out if they provide it. So let's just switch to APS-C. Yeah. So here, this is the lens we're talking about. Let's see if they have the MFT charts. It might take some time for the manufacturers to give out the MFT charts, so I'm not too worried if it is not available today. So if the MFT chart is like a straight line, then you can assume that this lens is sharp from corners to corners. But if it is like having a drop in the MFT chart, then you can assume that there is a dip in the corners, which means this corners will be soft. So that's how you can analyze the MFT charts. And so yeah, I think this should do. Even the weight is like just 600 grams for a lens of this range. Should be totally okay. I think it's a very good introduction in the market with the 16 to 300 millimeters for APS-C lenses, because Tamron have a lot in their arsenal and Sigma is competing with them, and also a lot of APS-C users today, because these are the cameras that people can afford. And APS-C, especially A6700, is like super popular. There are several communities where people are very active, and those people would love this lens. The only drawback is, of course, the aperture at f6.7, but for a lens of this caliber, this range, they cannot do anything about it. Okay, let's move on to the next product. I mean, yeah, you'll have to wait until, if you're too keen on sharpness, at least, instead of the aperture, just wait until the manufacturer releases the MFT chart, and then you can think about buying it. So the next product I want to discuss is Sony's 400 to 800 f6.3 to f8. This, I think, is a bummer. In my opinion, I don't like it. I don't like the lens to have its maximum aperture at f8. There's no better way to put it. Why? Because 800 is a good range. It's a promising range, but the f8 is not a good aperture at all. So if it is at f8, what happens is that you need to increase the ISO very high, like 6400, excuse me, or sometimes 12,800. So if you were to increase the ISO so high, you can imagine like how much noise you're gonna introduce from the sensor. So definitely not a lens for me. I would wait until the Sony release something like 800 millimeters comparable to Nikon lenses. Nikon does have a 800 millimeter f6.3. That's a beautiful, fantastic lens. It's expensive, but it's the reach that a wildlife photographer will need. So just wait until Sony brings a lens that is like 500 millimeter f5.6 from Sigma, or 600 millimeter f5.6 from Nikon, or even 800 millimeters f6.3 from Nikon. So don't go for this. This is also a heavy lens. This is on the heavy side. There is no Arca-Swiss mount. Yes, there is rubber in front. There's also hood with the rubber covering in the front. Yeah, this is the hood. There is also rubber covering in front. There are a lot of aspects I like about this lens. There's nothing to fault about this lens. But if you're making a cheap lens with slow apertures, your image will not be satisfactory. And why even bother making such a lens? It's a it's a missed opportunity, guys. Like G lenses are super good. 200 to 600 millimeter lenses, super good. I love it. I used to have it. I recently sold it, thinking I would get something like Sigma 500 millimeter f5.6. That is like just about a kilo, 1.3 kgs. But this one, on the other hand, let's look at the specs. How heavy is it? 2.5. Okay, not 3.5. 2.5 kilograms, which is super good in terms of the weight. I think the weight of the 200 to 600 millimeters is just about 2.1 kgs. This probably is like 300 grams heavier than the 200 to 600. So weight-wise, it's still okay to have a 400 to 800 millimeters range. But when it comes to the aperture, the Achilles heel of any photo is definitely the ISO. Okay, regardless of how high you bump up the shutter speed, there's always the high ISO noise reduction peeping in, making the image super soft, which is super bad. For good lighting conditions, this might work, but most likely not a lens for everybody. But, ooh, look at this MFT chart. I'm surprised. Guys, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to MFT charts. You see a straight horizontal line here, the red lines. That means in some aspect, at least in most aspect, you see there is just one line that's dipping. In most aspects, this lens is like sharp, corners to corners. You see here, 5 and 6. Let's go to 5. At 800 millimeters, the sharpness is like super spot on. That's impressive. But what happens at 400 millimeters is like it's not sharp corners to corners. But I would say for these kind of lenses, you are most likely to frame the image in the center, so you don't need to worry about corner sharpness to sharpness. But this is what I want to say. If you were to shoot anything beyond 200 millimeters, you don't need to worry about corners to corners, because you wouldn't shoot anything beyond 200 millimeters for a landscape. Only when you're shooting landscape, you might need to worry about the corners to corner sharpness. And for these kind of lenses, you'll be shooting sports or animals, and they will be framed towards the center, and you want to make the corners blurry a bit, and you might even like it to have some vignetting in the corners, which is totally fine. So MFT chart is nothing to worry about. Everything is on the upper level, which means they are sharp. Sharpness wise, great. Weight wise, great. Size wise, I think it's great still. 400 to 800 millimeter zoom lens. But what's bothering me is the aperture, just the aperture. If you're pairing this with a full frame camera, you're good. But if you're not pairing with the full frame camera, then it's bad. If you're thinking of getting this lens for A6700, don't get it. If you're getting this lens for a camera like A7C II, then yeah, you'll be fine. But it's still pricey. I think the price of this lens is about $2,900 or something. So the price is still okay, but when it comes to the weight, when it comes to the aperture, it's not okay. So let's move on to the next part of the release. 16 millimeters. I don't have any of these products in hand, but it's important to talk about these things because these are exciting news, guys. These are super exciting news. I am really, really appreciating all these manufacturers coming up with these products. So here, 16 millimeter f1.8. This is a lens like this 15 millimeter. I have this 15 millimeter lens for my APS-C needs, and I use it with the full frame with the clear image zoom all the time because this is f1.4 lens. That's not going to change even in the full frame cameras. It's going to be the same, but I can use the clear image zoom to crop in into the black circles. So that's something good. And also the 16 millimeter is to 16 millimeters for full frame, and this 15 millimeters for APS-C cameras. Would I buy this for 16 millimeter f1.8? I wouldn't, because I already have a 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8 for my full frame needs. So I wouldn't buy it. But if I don't have this G Master 2 lens, I would certainly consider the 16 millimeter f1.8. It's a super good vlogging lens. It's especially made for vloggers because the weight of this is just 309 grams. It's super, oh, I'm sorry, 304 grams. And this lens, it's an APS-C lens, is 215 or 219 grams, and the full frame lens is just 304 with super close minimal focus. That's impressive in my opinion. So if you were to check out the MFT charts, it's obviously, if you were to put it very close, the corner sharpness is non-existent, but if you were to zoom, or I would say focus towards the infinity, it's going to have really good corners to corner sharpness. So think about it, like if you were to put the object or the subject at the close focus distance, you will not get adequate sharpness at all. So that's what this MFT says. So try to read the MFT details before you buy your lenses. I do feel like this 15 millimeters is super sharp, but this G Master lens on the other hand is super sharp compared to anything I have used in the past. And if the 16 millimeter were to be a G Master lens, it would be a bit heavier, but also like sharp corners to corners. So that's what is my opinion. And if you don't own the lens that I showed you just now, 15 millimeter f1.4, go with the 16 f1.8 instead of the G Master. You should be good. I got this G Master 16 to 35 f2.8 just because I want to have the versatility. Since I'm carrying a lot of stuff when I'm traveling, I want to have just two lenses, two cameras set up, and also this Fujifilm X100VI for my standard focal length, and it solves the purpose that I need. I don't need this 16 millimeter f1.8 lens. That's my opinion, guys, but it's very personal. Maybe for you the requirement is different. Think about your requirement and needs before you buy the lenses. All right, but that's it. Let's move on to the next topic of the cameras. We have Panasonic S1R2. So I believe in their official website, they're not giving away their, okay, these are firmware updates, products. They have S series. Let's go into S series. So here, S1H is supposed to be, most likely S1H Mark II is going to be like super amazing video camera, but S1R is their high resolution photo camera, and that's what is released now, the second version of it. And let's see if they have it here. How do I navigate? How do I navigate? There's no products list, right? Yeah, that's the problem with these websites. They don't show any products as series. It's just photo galleries. Yeah, this is why I rely upon sites like B&H Photos, where I can just quickly go into them. The price is impressive, really on par with R7 V, and I believe it's like Z8. Yeah, very close to Z8. And let's look at the spec and let's compare it. So if I can compare it, where do I compare? There must be some place where I can compare, right? Yeah, I think they removed it for the photos because there are too many variations in each camera, so probably they removed it. But anyway, so if you consider this, the lens mount is L mount. It's not compatible with Sony, obviously, and they have 44 megapixel. That's an interesting choice. We have seen 45 megapixel sensors, we have seen 50 megapixel sensors, and 64 and 33 even here, and even 36 I think in Canon, but R7 that is. But this is an interesting choice of lens, 44 megapixel. I think they want to get that niche ground of getting the 8K for videos, and also to have the very good resolution for photos, and that's why they have chosen this resolution. But otherwise, I think they would go for something like 50 megapixel, like for A1. So here we see electronic shutter at 8,000, 10,000. Oh, these are all very good. And also we have the front curtain shutter. I never use it at all, but yeah, for people who use, it's fine, it's there. 1/8,000th of a second. Yeah, it's pretty standard. These are all pretty standard. Let's see what's impressive here. So when it comes to auto white balance in G9 Mark II, I criticize that camera to the core because the auto white balance never worked properly, and it was like too aggressive. There is no control over the auto white balance to reduce its aggressiveness. But in S5.2 on the other hand, the auto white balance mode was working super good. The colors were super accurate and poppy. That's not the case. That was not the case in G9 Mark II, but I believe if S1R Mark II is being developed by the Lumix S series guys, I believe they got it right here too. I'm sorry, they got it right here too. So white balance, not too worried about it. Continuous shooting up to 40 frames per second, which is fantastic, just in RAW. If you were to choose RAW plus JPEG, maybe the maximum frames per second might vary. And also, yeah, let's talk about the internal recording options here. I'm not too worried about 422, 420, but I want to understand 422's frame rates. So it can shoot up to 60 frames per second. Interestingly, it can also shoot up to 48 frames per second. That's an interesting frame rate, which we have never seen in any cameras before. And also here, 48 frames per second. Interesting. Maybe if you want to have like mild slow motion, maybe you can use this to reduce its bit rate. And also, I see. So what's happening here is the codec. Oh, very important factor, guys. Like most people miss this part. So when it comes to this one, this is like long op. If you look at all these transfer rates at 300 megabits per second, this will show you what is the compression they are going for. So for example, these are H.264 compression, H.264 long op. But this, on the other hand, this is 800 megabits per second. This most likely is not H.264. I wish CineD has something to talk about. Let's see, CineD. They might not have it. That's a problem. CineD will take some time. Oh yeah, they have it. Awesome. Oh, they might not have it. Okay, they have some information. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's do this. Okay, so this is an exercise for you guys. If you were to compare multiple frame rates between multiple different cameras, you can do this as well. So cookie settings, always deny all. I deny everything. I don't take risks, so yeah. So codecs, see, every single thing is long op so far. There's no all intra, there's ProRes HQ. That might be like a all intra codec. Yeah, they have all-eye codec. So this is what I was talking about. See, so the transfer rate is 800 megabits per second. So judging by the codec, judging by the transfer rate, you can understand what kind of codec it will be, because the amount of data that's been transferred, if you were to use a less compressed codec, will be pretty high. So that's exactly what we are seeing here. So if I were to filter just the codec, let me choose all I. Yeah, so these are the formats that is available for S1R Mark II, and I love all intra codec. It's like super smooth when editing, and this is something I value. And also having just 800 megabits per second at 60 frames per second is super impressive in my opinion. It's not going to reduce any quality, but just having that option is good. And also I like the fact that they have 48 frames per second at 600 megabits per second, which is again super good. As you notice here, the sampling rate for all intra codecs is most likely be 10-bit. It's always like 422 10-bit color, so you get very less compression. And the downside is, like, if you were to use smaller size cards, CF Express Type B cards, then you will end up with less recording time. But for me, I would say I have used these in Z6 II, I believe, or some other cameras. I think Sony FX30. FX30, I used to use 1 terabyte CF Express Type A cards, and that will take like 4 hours to fill up the memory card with 600 megabits per second at, I think, 50, 60 frames per second. That's what it is, all intra codec, XAVC-SI. But here, this one is not XAVC-SI, it's a Panasonic codecs. I will choose choose all intra, and then this ProRes HQ in Nikon Z6 III is all intra codec. I believe this one should be the same, but you can see the data rates are like super high. If you were to use the Apple laptops, this might end up being very beneficial for you guys. But if you're not using Apple, if you're using like Windows laptop, even for the old laptops, this all intra codec is more likely to work better for you. So yeah, this is all there is. And I like this fact about this S1R Mark II. I like the fact that they have all intra until 60 frames per second. I'm not sure if that is cropped or not. Don't take my word for it. So if it is cropped, then it should be okay. But sorry, if it is not cropped, it's awesome. But if it is cropped, it's a bummer. Okay, so let's get this done as well. So we were talking about the physical things, right? So it can flip up and down and also on the sides, which is the design I love. They have a lot of design cues from GH7 as well, which I love about these cameras. So GH7 camera is the body itself is like super good. I love all these controls behind. I especially love this button over here and also the lever over here. There are a lot of things I like about the S1R Mark II, but would it be a camera that will take me from Sony to Lumix? Definitely not, because of the lens choices. I haven't seen how it works. Next weekend, we'll be going to the IMI show where I will be using this camera handheld, and I will show you what I'm talking about. They do have a CF Express Type B cards. I believe the EVF is excellent. I also believe there are so many other things that are super good in this camera as well. All right, let's go down to other things as well. I don't think this one has like 32-bit float audio recording. Let's go to audio. Yeah, so GH7 has this 32-bit float audio recording with an additional hot shoe mount, and I wish it had, but apparently they don't. But also it has the USB output, recording modes up to just 30 frames per second, which is again a bummer. Internal recordings are fine. So yeah, I cannot take all these data from a third-party website as the right way to do, but let me see if that's available. Okay, so Lumix Thailand. Okay, let's go to Lumix. Let's see if they have the data. I'm looking for the spec sheet. Just the spec sheet. Apparently the spec sheets are not available. Let me go to the S series. Okay. So this is the Thailand website. Thailand website apparently is more easier to navigate. Even I don't understand the language itself, but yeah, that's where we are. So let me. There is an easy way to do all these things. So translate to English, translate the full page. We get these translated. So specifications. Here. So let's see. So it's 44 megapixel, 40 frames per second, face detect, hybrid autofocus, ProRes HQ, RAW as well. These are all like super impressive specs. Dual IS2. If you haven't used any cameras with dual IS2, you'll be like super surprised with how effectively it's working. And also, let's see all the specs here. I'm not sure if they have shared everything, but yeah, this is, you have the option to choose APS-C size as well. And this is roughly around, let's just do the math. Let's do the math, guys. 19 megapixels. So since we are already here, it's super simple to do the math. 19 megapixel if you were to use the APS-C size, and this probably is the maximum size you will get out of this camera, and that's what it is. So yeah, these are pretty standard. If you're wondering from 44 or 45 megapixel how much APS-C crop you're gonna get, 19 megapixels. And also for motion picture, that's movies in terms of Sony, this is all we have. They have asterisks 1, 2, and 3. Let's check out what these asterisks mean. Right, we definitely need to. See, when it comes to here they say all intra, asterisk 4. There's also asterisk 4. I believe this is what I worry about. Asterisk 4. Where can I see the asterisk 4? Yeah, proxy video recording available. Crop zoom not available. Yeah, so HLG, high-res audio, blah blah blah. Okay, they don't talk about the crop. They do not talk about the crop. Maybe once we get the camera. No one talks about the crop. Only Nikon talks about the crop. So if you go to the user manual in Nikon, you will see what is the crop that's available for each and every video settings. That's fantastic. I wish more companies do that. And they do have dual ISO. So V-log is something I would do. Dynamic range expansion, base ISO is 400 and 4000. If it is high, oh, it's interesting. Interesting. Look at all these dual base ISOs. So in high, it's where is the dual base ISO? Okay, so here. So the low is this one. So you can start recording using 200, and the second base probably is this. See? Okay, this is the base ISO, and this is the second base ISO. This is not the same with the Sony cameras. Sony cameras used to have the base ISO at 800 and 3200, and this is somewhere in the lower range, I would say. If you were to choose non-log recording options, it would be even lower. So I would say the second base is a lot lower than I would anticipate I would use. I like the fact that Sony a7C II has the second base at 3200, which is not the case over here. So that's a big bummer in my opinion. Yeah. But I do love the all-intra fags, the all-intra recording options they provide. The lens options again is a bummer in my opinion. They don't have a dual IS lenses yet, so that's again something that might come up in the future. We all should be excited on all the things that might come up in the future for sure. So let me go back here again. S lenses. So let's see what lenses come with the dual IS, right? We are talking about S lenses. S lenses are full frame lenses, and here none of them are marked dual IS, which mean there's no lens that exists today with dual IS for full frame S Lumix S cameras. So when they release the new dual IS compatible lenses, we will have the option to use it with S1R Mark II. But today of recording, on the date of recording this video, there is none. So yeah, don't quote me after the release of this video. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. There's none available. So there are a few options that might be beneficial in the future once they release the new product for you guys to use the S1R Mark II. But overall, I think this camera is super promising, except for the second dual base ISO. And that's about it. That's my opinion about Panasonic S1R Mark II. So yeah, if you want to know more about the Sony cameras, you can go here. You can check out all these Sony videos that I have made in the past. I've talked in depth in understanding the camera. So basically, my idea about making all these videos for you guys is for you to understand the tool that you use for your everyday content creation requirement instead of talking about the camera itself. So I talked about the video recording formats, how it will be useful for you guys, and also the frame rates, the bit rates, all these things. These are the things that you will take away by the end of the day into your heart to understand the tool you use and to use it in the right way. So that's more the objective. That's more of objective that you need to use the tools that you need, right? So instead of getting and accumulating a lot of gears, you choose the right thing you need by analyzing what the tool has to offer to you. That should be the way, not the other way. Everything look fancy. Everything will or might look fancy for you guys, but you don't have to put your money on fancy looking stuff. So yeah, that's about it. If there are any questions, put it in the comment. I see no chat here, but I still want to get these live streams out so that you get benefited out of all the discussion topics. If you want to participate, join me on my live streams, just join, put it in the chat, ask away any questions that you might have, and let's meet up in the next live stream next weekend. Next weekend is going to be another interesting weekend because whatever I have discussed today might end up being in that event, and I might get my hands on all these products, and I will explain a lot of things I discussed today theoretically, practically in the next event. So yeah, meet you there in the next live stream. See you guys.